Hello, I'm Bobby, the pastor of Lighthouse Church and online ministry. Today we are going to continue our look in the Sermon on Mount. And the reason we're doing this is Jesus lays out what it means to be a Christ follower in the Sermon on Mount. You know, he is challenging the Jewish leaders and challenging the people who are going to follow him and how to truly follow him and understand that sin is so much more than just actions. It's a heart issue. And so is following Jesus. Following him is so much more than just an action. It's also a heart issue. We see this when he talks about murder. You know, back then, most Jewish believers only thought that murder was an action. If you killed your brother, if you killed your sister, if you killed your neighbor, that was murder. But Jesus shows us, no, murder is a heart issue. If you have any sort of hatred for your brother and sister, then that's considered murder as well. And then in this section we are going through right now, really Matthew 6 and onward, he shows us that following him is also more than an action. When you pray, when you give to needy, if you are doing it out of pride, if you're doing it because you expect something back, you expect praise, then that's the wrong type of heart to have. And so, in today's video, we are going to continue this look at, what type of heart we should truly have. And first of all, before I really get into the meat of our passage, when you go through the Sermon on Mount, it might seem like it is hard. It is impossible to do all of these things. It is impossible to follow it to, a T. And truth is it is. That's where Jesus comes in. Jesus knows that the law in itself is impossible for any human to do, or for any human to complete, except for himself. And that's why he is the perfect sacrifice. That is why he is urging us to understand that we can't do it without Jesus Christ, without what he did on the cross. And so, I just want to encourage you, while we are going through the Sermon on Mount, while we go through the book of Romans, while we go through the Bible, it might seem like it's impossible for us to keep every single thing, to, completely remove ourselves and our pride out of doing things like giving to needy, fasting, praying, so on and so forth. And truth is it is. But that's why we need Jesus. That's why we need a mediator in the form of Jesus. Jesus loved us so much that he, who is God, came down in human form to be the sacrifice, to help us out, so that it isn't impossible for us through his blood, through his sacrifice. Once we understand that, we can truly follow him. So, like I said, that's a little rabbit trail, but let's get on to our main focus for this video, which is fasting. You see this in Matthew 6, starting in verse 16. And it says, when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigured their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So first thing we need to do is, what is fasting? Fasting is a spiritual discipline where we cut something out that is very important to us. A lot of times it is, food is considered, but it doesn't have to be food. I've seen people fast from electricity, from electronics, from gaming, from social media, so on and so forth. It's just something that we spend a lot of our time doing. And so we cut that thing out. And whenever we feel the urge of doing that thing, whenever we feel the urge of trying to, eat or be, on social media or go gaming, we pray instead. And what we are doing is we are focusing on God in the hope of getting closer to God, getting closer to who He is. Now, sometimes we fast because of a sin in our life. Sometimes we fast because we are in preparation of something. A lot of times churches will fast for a season when they are starting a new ministry or starting a new church. A lot of times you will fast just to get closer to God for a season. And so this is why you fast. This is how you fast. Is basically you just pick something that is really close, that you enjoy doing. And instead of that, you're focusing on prayer, focusing on God. Like I said, there are a lot of different types of fasts. Daniel fast is very popular. That comes from the book of Daniel. A lot of people fast from food. Some people fast from meat. So on or so forth. And so, but the main thing is instead of that fasting, you are focusing on God, focusing on Christ through prayer, through just surrendering yourself so that you can become closer to God. How do we not fast? This is really what our passage is talking about. There's a lot of ways you can fast, and there's a lot of ways you shouldn't fast. And Jesus is really outlining that in today's passage. And what the main thing is this is something that is between you and Christ. This is something that you should do in secret, not bang your drums, not cling your cymbals or anything like that. And that's because, there, especially during that time, there were people who, when they were fast, they would dirty themselves up. That way they would look like they are fasting, look like they are something, so that they could get rewarded for this sacrifice they were doing, so that they could look more important than they truly are. Let's remember, like I said, one of the reasons the Sermon on the Mount was such a heavy hitter was because Jesus was going at the throat of religious leaders at this time. And he was really showing them that a lot of their actions was just for praise. A lot of their actions was just so that they could get something from it. It was all of just an outward expression so that people could tell how religious, how great they were. It was all just a symbolic issue showing people how important they are. And that's what Jesus doesn't want us to become. Jesus doesn't want us to give to the needy just so we could show people how great we are. Jesus doesn't want us to pray in front of people just so they can tell how much of a prayer we are, how spiritually filled we are. Jesus doesn't want us to fast just so that we can make it seem like we are better than everyone else. And so I just want to encourage you today, wherever you are at in your relationship, do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to get closer to Jesus. That should be the mindset of every Christian. Thank you.